Thanks for checking out this video. This is the 1995 installment of the 1990s horror movie superlative series I am doing with your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete. So as a reminder, watch this, watch this whole video, get all of my picks and my reasons for my picks, then go over to your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete's channel, which is linked in my description. Watch his video of the same name, get his picks and justifications for him. Then come back to my channel, go to the community tab of the channel, and vote for who you like most, if you really want to. I mean, you don't have to vote, but, it's fun. It's fun. So, yeah, here we go. 95. Some interesting picks on this one. Rolling right into it. Most amazing for 1995. For people who remember my pick from a few years ago, a few episodes of this ago, of Silence of the Lambs, this will be no big surprise. 7. This film, much like Silence of the Lambs, I classify as horror for sure. I feel like the 90s was a time where the blurring of the lines between thriller and horror really started happening, and people have a hard time discerning. But especially if I'm going to call Silence of the Lambs horror, I'm definitely going to call 7 horror because it is darker, it is more messed up, and it is more gruesome than Silence of the Lambs. So this film, obviously done by David Fincher, which is phenomenal. It looks phenomenal. It's very dark most of the time, like dark lighting, basically. It's actually even raining a lot of the times in the film, so it's very like dour setting and atmosphere for the film. But basically, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's about a murderer, a serial killer who is killing people based off the 7 deadly sins. Brad Pitt's in it, Gwyneth Paltrow, Morgan Freeman, who obviously always do amazing jobs, and Kevin Spacey is in it as well. And they do a really good job of having it be kind of a police procedural, but also being very horrific in what they're finding. And just the visuals are so messed up and scary. This film is amazingly done. I think it's a masterpiece as far as it comes to that like horror thriller mixture of films. Highly touted by a lot of people and for a very good reason. But it's very disturbing. It's very messed up. And for everyone who's seen this, the last thing I want to say is, what's in the box? That and the scene of the sloth death. You all know what I'm talking about if you've seen it. Horrifying. Anyway, that is why easily my pick for most amazing for 1995 is 7. Now for my pick for the best so bad it's good. I don't own this one, but it is going to be Jacko. Now, Jacko doesn't have a whole lot of story to it, and it doesn't really need to because it's my best so bad it's good pick. It has Linnea Quigley in it, though, who, as you would assume, if Linnea Quigley is in a film, she's getting topless, and she does in this in a ridiculously prolonged shower scene, which I've read it took them like 3 days to shoot. I don't understand that. Apparently, she got paid pretty well for this film for mainly just doing a shower scene. I mean, it's ridiculous. But if you're into that, it's in there. The story is just basically about a killer scarecrow / jack-o'-lantern, hence his name Jacko. He's like a scarecrow with a jack-o'-lantern head, which I will say, the design of him is really good. He looks really good. But the writing of this film is terrible. There's really not much of any story to it. Jacko's just stalking around killing people. And even the setup to this film of this guy kind of like telling the legend of Jacko around a campfire. Horrible. Like, the dialogue is horribly written. There's barely any story to it. And the acting is horrendous. But it's that type of wonderful special horrendous. There's even a character who shows up in it who's like a next door neighbor of this family who they don't really know. And then all of a sudden she like comes over one day, starts talking to the guy there. And then all of a sudden she's just at their house all the time. Like, there's no real explanation. It doesn't make any sense. It's not very realistic. But there's a lot of those types of choices in the film. And it's just ridiculous, over the top, stupid, and I enjoy it. So that's my pick for the best so bad it's good for 1995, Jacko. Now coming for the most WTF. And for anyone who's seen this film, I'm sure you can nod your heads in agreement with this one. Bloody Muscle... Oh my gosh. Tongue twister. Bloody Muscle Bodybuilder in Hell. This film is touted as the Japanese Evil Dead. And you can see why. It's not nearly as good as the Japanese Evil Dead, but it took a lot from it. You can see it was very heavily inspired. It's super low budget, you can tell. And I think for how low budget it is, there's a lot of heart in it, and you can see they poured a lot into it. But it's definitely one of those movies where there's not really a whole lot of story to it. It's just basically about a bodybuilder who goes with, I think it was his girlfriend, to this house that ends up being haunted, and then he's fighting things that are kind of Deadite-ish, because it's very much like Evil Dead. It even has the claymation or the stop-motion animation stuff, much like in Evil Dead, that I even when it doesn't look great, I think it looks cool. Like, I'm a big fan of that type of stuff. So they even do that. The practical effects are pretty laughable, but things are just out there. There's even like a head with a hand on the bottom of it is like a thing. That's actually in the poster art. You can check that out. But it is a wild ride. You never know where it's going. Left field stuff all the time, but it's fun. I mean, it makes you feel like, yes, I see why this is the Japanese, or considered to be the Japanese Evil Dead. I get it. Way more low budget. Well, I don't know. Maybe about similar, but skill-wise, a lot less. And from a technical standpoint, it doesn't look as good, but that's probably because Evil Dead's gotten a lot more attention as far as like being preserved and getting good transfers for media release. So my most WTF pick, Bloody Muscle Bodybuilder in Hell. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. I think it's still on Shudder at this point. Now going to the gore category. My best gore film for 1995 is going to be Lord of Illusions. There wasn't a lot of like great gore in 1995 as far as horror films go, but this one was the best in my opinion. Some good blood flow to the film, some good deaths of people, and the whole premise of the movie is a cult leader who goes by the name of Nyx, who's, I forget his name, but he's played by the guy who played like the head of the military school in the show Malcolm in the Middle that Francis goes to. That guy, when you see him, you'll know him. But he played that character extremely well, and it's basically about a character played by Scott Bakula who is trying to, get this cult leader because there have been deaths that occur because of him. And he's got like these powers, and where my pick for this being best gore really comes into play is towards the end of the film, where very weird things start happening with the body of Nyx, including things that really freak me out, such as things coming out of his skin. It's kind of like these like spiny looking things that also puff up, just like coming out of his skin all over the place. It looks disgusting. And he even has those things that then come out of his eye holes. They show him and his eyeballs aren't there, and these things pop out of his eyes. Nightmare fuel. The stuff is disgusting. It's wonderfully done practical effects wise, and that is why I'm just going to say that this is my pick for best gore for 95, Lord of Illusions. Just saying. Next is the most unique category, and for this one, it's one that kind of deals with the subgenre that's been tread a decent amount in horror film, but it did it in such a different way that I was very impressed with it, and that is the film The Day of the Beast. There have been a lot of films done of like the good clergymen versus the devil. They're trying to, stop the coming of the devil to, destroy the earth. And a lot of those films feel very boring and overly done. This one, very unique. That's why it's in the unique category. The approach to how the clergy person as the main character in this film goes about it is to try and do as many terrible things as possible, because his whole idea is that he needs to be able to be hell acceptable in order to be able to kill the devil, which is a very interesting take on this type of film. It's for that reason, some really wild stuff goes down. You like the main character, but he's also doing some terrible things, which makes you feel conflicted, but you also understand his motivation, and you're kind of rooting for him to do these terrible things while you're also cringing because he's doing these terrible things. It's a really well-written film. It's really well acted. It's very well scripted. It's a Spanish language film, and if you have not seen it, even if you're not reading subtitles, this is a must. You should definitely watch it. Super interesting, super unique, and that's why Day of the Beast is my pick for most unique for 95. Now that leads me to the most overrated, and this is usually where I disappoint some people because it's a film they love. This one for me has got to be Castle Freak. I know there are a lot of people who love Castle Freak. I think it's fun enough, but it's gotten a lot of love since it's been on The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs, and I know that he injects a new kind of passion into these types of films with people who are fans of it, and I get that. That's cool. But for me, it's actually kind of a boring film. It's mainly about shock value, and I don't think the shock value is even that great. The acting's fine. You know, there's Jeffrey Combs and there's Barbara Crampton, always great to see them. But the story isn't that great. It's super simplistic. The dialogue written isn't great, even though the acting is good. And it just has terrible pacing. It just kind of plods along very slowly, and it doesn't give you enough of what you really want. Sure, there are some kind of like gross, disturbing, interesting concepts thrown into the film, but in my opinion, it's just not enough to make it like a good film or something that I want to watch more than once. Seen it once, I'm done with it. So that is why my pick for most overrated is Castle Freak. And that leads me to my most underrated, which I happen to own. And this is another one that was covered by Joe Bob Briggs on The Last Drive-In. And I was so excited when he covered it because I've been a fan of this film for some time now. And that is The Ice Cream Man. Or just, sorry, Ice Cream Man. I always get confused whether the is there or not. But Ice Cream Man, starring Clint Howard, who does a phenomenal job as the killer Ice Cream Man. This film is a perfect mix of good and bad, in my opinion, where, like, the dialogue's not well written, it's very corny, it's very ridiculous, a lot of the stuff is very on the nose. The acting is not good. They even have a kid in it who they make look fat by like actually putting padding in his shirt, and you can tell. So like it's a very not great done film that plays really well though, because it's just so much fun. And a lot of that ends up hinging on Clint Howard's performance, honestly. Like he puts so much joy and interesting aspects into the character of the Ice Cream Man. The story gets pretty interesting, actually, and I do like the way that they end it. I think it's kind of like a fun cliffhanger-y type ending. Oh, also need to say that Olivia Hussey is in this film in a, kind of small role. But the practical effects in it are great, too. That'll really surprise you with how kind of low quality the film is in general. Great practical effects to it. It's got some good gross-out moments, and there's a lot of really legitimately kind of funny humor that's baked into the film. So that is why my pick for the most underrated film in 95 is Ice Cream Man. I love Ice Cream Man. Me and Darcy, and a lot of other people. I actually did a review of Ice Cream Man some years ago, and I dedicated it to Darcy. I don't know if she ever checked it out, but she did subscribe to my YouTube channel based off it. So that was nice. But yeah, so there we go. There are my picks. You can let me know your picks and what you think of my picks and Uncle Pete's in the comments. Love to hear that type of stuff. We love the engagement we've been getting from everyone on this. People seem to really like it, and the excitement around it is awesome. It's a lot of fun. So, once again, since you're done with my video, go over to his channel, which is in the description. Watch his video, then come back, go to the community tab, and vote on whose picks you like the most, or who justified it the best, or whatever. So, please subscribe to both our channels if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell button for both our channels if you haven't already. We appreciate that. But regardless, thanks for being involved with this. Thanks for watching this video and his video. And until next time, keep it brutal.